Hey guys, in the last lesson you saw how we were able to get all the data we'll be using in the translation list. Now we have to fit the list with the correct values. Let's start by deleting this var dump. Okay, first of all, I only want the list to be visible if my query returns any results. Let's assume that the user hasn't yet contributed any translation to the site. It makes no sense to show an empty table here at the bottom of the page, right? So, to achieve this, I can encapsulate the whole table with an if check block. And what can I check here? Well, one of the properties of the WPDB class is num_rows, as I have already explained in this section. What it does is check what is the number of rows returned from a select query. I can do this check like this. Or simply WPDB num_rows. WordPress will understand that I want the num_rows property relative to this query app here. Actually, it will understand that I want the property of the last executed query, okay? So I don't have to indicate necessarily which query is it. It's the last one, okay? Okay, the next step now is to identify the part of the code that will contain the loop. That is, which part of the code here needs to be repeated. But it's quite easy because the table header has to be the same every time, and it is this part down here that needs to be repeated. So the loop will start exactly here, right? Between the t-body and the beginning of the table row. Just so you can see that this is the case, let's start with an outline of the loop here. As I mentioned last time, since the output of my results are objects, I have to use a for each loop. So, for each, the array is results. Each item in the array will be called result. And the loop ends here after the tr is closed. Now look how interesting this is. If I save this and preview it in the front end, you'll notice here that the number of rows is equal to the number of objects returned by the query. Great, this means that the loop is correct. Now the only thing to do is to get the value for each field. Let's do it then. The first field I'll be bringing is this one, the translation published date. Well, the simplest way to get the date, in fact, the simplest way to get all the values inside the for each loop is to do an echo, call result, arrow, and the column name. In this case, post_date. If I only do this, look what happens. Take a look. Here I already got the date, but the format is not the best. For example, I don't want the time here. I just want the date, preferably in a format that is easier to read. For example, it could have the name of the month, the day, and the year. To do this, we can use PHP's date command. So here we go. I will call date. And here I pass two parameters. The first one is the format. I won't give you too much details, okay? If you want to know more about this function, you can find more details about it on sites like php.net or other such sites. The format I will use is the following: capital M, lowercase d, capital Y. The second parameter is the date I will use as a base for formatting, which comes from this result post date. Except that this second parameter has to be in timestamp format. What is inside this field here is not a timestamp, as you can see on the screen. It is a common string. To convert this string into a timestamp, I pass it to another PHP function called string2time. To close this up, for security reasons, I will pass all this here inside an Ask HTML. Now let's see what we have on the screen. Perfect, look at this. Now I have the date in the format I want here. Let's go to the next field then, the post title. This one is much easier. I will echo result post title and pass all this here inside an Ask HTML too. Cool, check it out. Now I have here the titles of all the translations sent by this particular user, me in this case. It is not so complicated, at least it's not so complicated for these fields which have a single value. Now the next field doesn't follow this pattern, because here for the transliteration I can have two different values, yes or no. But this is not so complicated either. I can use a very simple ternary structure to bring up the right content. As we saw last time, when we did a var dump on the result array, the value of this field is an element of the array called meta_value. So in this ternary if, we can do the following. In other words, if the value of the field is yes, I will echo the word yes. Otherwise, the echo will display the word no. Just to complement this, I will pass yes and no inside both the sanitization and translation functions. You could use a switch block here too, but it takes up more space, okay? This ternary structure is simpler and more elegant. The next field will be for the edit link, but I will leave it for last. I will also skip this link that will be used to delete the post, and I'll move on to the last field, which is simpler to explain. This one is the same as the previous field, only the values are different. So I'll put the code here and explain it in a moment. So here the column name is post status. If the value is published, I will show this text published. Otherwise, the text will be pending. Of course, guys, this only works here because I only have two possible values. If I had more possible values, I would have to use a switch statement, okay? Here you can see an example of the same code written with a switch statement, just to give you an idea of what to do if you have more than one type of value to use. Then you can just add as many cases as you need, okay? Well, let's finish then with the two more complicated columns. Let's start with the link that will be used to delete the post. So to create the link, first I add an A tag. Inside it, I will have the text that will appear in the link, like this. No secret at all. Now for the href, I need to open the PHP tags here and echo a function called getDeletePostLink. This will generate a link that allows me to directly delete a post. The first parameter is the post ID. I can achieve this by passing result ID. The second parameter is deprecated, so I just pass an empty string. And the third parameter is whether I want to force the deletion of the post. If I set it to true, I will delete the post in one go. I mean, I'll be completely skipping the trash, okay? That's what I'm gonna do. The URL that will be generated for me with the help of this function will have the ID of the post that will be deleted. It will also have a parameter called action with the value delete and a unique nonce for each link. I could leave it like this, but a nice thing to do is to ask the users if they really want to delete the post. Perhaps they clicked on the link by accident. So to avoid this, let's create a simple JavaScript pop-up that will be launched when the user clicks on the link, like this. Let's do a test. If you hover the mouse over the link, you see the URL format I mentioned earlier. Now I will click on the link to delete it. And now I have this pop-up here. It shows me the name of the post. If I cancel, nothing happens. If I hit OK, the post will be deleted once and for all. So I'll click OK here. Now look, the post is already gone. Great, it worked like a charm. Now all that's missing is our last action here, that will be to create a link to the edit page. Let me just remind you one thing. This edit page already exists in this WordPress installation. It is one of those pages that was created when the plugin was activated, and it also has a shortcode in it. In fact, the idea is that we create the code for that shortcode as well, and we will start doing that in the next video. So when I click on this link, which is yet to be created, I will open that edit page, okay? To achieve this, I'm going to use a WordPress function which is among the most useful. This function is called addQueryArg. At first, it may be a little bit complicated to understand, but as soon as you start using it more often, you see that it's very useful. The purpose of this function is to add variables to any URL. But before you use the function, you might want to open the edit page in the front end so you can understand some basics. Well, ever since we activated the plugin, we created this edit page, and it can be opened using the slug, which is edit-translation. So I just need to add this slug here in the URL. And this is the edit page, okay? It only displays the plain shortcode, and it's not doing anything, of course. What I want to do on this page here is edit only the post that refers to the clicked link. So for example, let me go back to the previous page. If I hover over the delete link here, I see that this is the post ID, okay? What I want to do is the following. When I click on the edit link, I want this page here to be opened. But I also want a parameter to be passed in the URL, which is gonna be something like this. $post equals, and after it, I'll have the post ID. So what can I do with that in hand? Well, I can do a lot of things since I'll have the post ID here in the URL. First of all, I can open the correct post for editing. And when it's time to save the post, I know exactly which post will be updated, right? So, okay, I think you understand what we need, right? First, I'll create a variable here called edit_post. And I'll call addQueryArg. The first parameter is the name of the parameter that I want to pass to the URL. As I just showed you, the format is going to be $post equals ID. So the name of the parameter here is post. The second option is the value that will be passed to the parameter. In this case, it is the post ID, which I get with result ID. And last, I pass the URL to which the parameter should be added. To get the URL of the edit page dynamically, I do like this. Okay, done. Now I just need to create the HTML link using this variable here. Let's see the result on the screen then. Let me see this link here. Look at this. See it? The format is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. Now if I click here, look how cool it is. Now I can open the edit page and I'm already passing here in the URL the ID of the post I want to edit. This will be very useful for building the next shortcode. So that's it. I hope you guys have enjoyed these lessons and that you have learned a lot of new and cool things. We still have a few things to figure out, but that will be in the next lesson. Until then.